Hello and welcome to this edition of Iraklion Magazine. I'm Pete Franket.
And I'm Deborah Hull. Tonight's show takes us from high-technology test equipment to a sleepy little Greek village.
Deborah spotlights a man who has made education his life. On Touch and Go, we spotlight a lot of kid stuff and the month of the military child.
That plus a recap of the month's sports events with Gino Plyler and a few surprises on Iraklion Magazine. Stay with us.
I know I have the right to say how I feel, and I feel right. We all have our duty, it's part of the deal, and that's all right. When you're proud, and I don't mind saying I'm proud, to do what I'm doing no matter what it may be. It makes things safer for you and me, and I'm proud, yes I'm proud. I know it's my job to be right here where no job's too small. 'Cause what I do for us all wherever duty calls. When you're proud, and I don't mind saying I'm proud, to do what I'm doing no matter what it may be. It makes things safer for you and me, and I'm proud, yes I'm proud, I'm proud.
Tonight, Shar Hazelwood and Dan Kirkendall kick off a new feature called Behind the Scenes.
And that's an appropriate title because though Dan and Shar are assigned to AFRTS, they are not broadcasters. Shar Hazelwood is our admin person, and Dan Kirkendall handles supply.
In tonight's story, they take a look at a crew that doesn't get much glory.
Yet bases as far away as Bitburg, Germany would know if they stopped doing their job. Here's Dan and Shar.
Here at the station, we use this test equipment to make sure that our other broadcasting equipment works properly.
Tonight, we will visit PMEL, the people who make sure our equipment is accurate.
What's PMEL?
PMEL, the acronym is Precision Measurement Equipment Laboratory.
You'll find the inside of PMEL kept spotlessly clean. There is a reason.
We have double doors to keep dust out, and we also have cleanup once a week. The temperature, it must be 74 degrees plus or minus 6 degrees, and humidity must be either between 20% and 50%. If it gets less than 20%, it will cause static electricity, and more than that, there's a possibility of too much moisture.
Inside this carefully controlled environment, the people who are PMEL calibrate equipment from all over our base.
And we support the base with maintenance and calibration support for all electronic test equipment and for things like gauges for the fire department, torque wrenches for motor pool, and various other non-electronic items also.
The equipment used here is amazingly precise. Even something as simple as a rock used to provide a flat surface to measure from is polished to 25 millionth of an inch in smoothness.
A lot of very expensive equipment is used to make sure that other expensive equipment works properly.
But how do they know the technicians are doing their job properly?
My multi-level continuous sampling system. Okay, and you asked me about that before. Okay, the way that the quality assurance people sample this gear to make sure that the product going out is exactly what it's supposed to be. We've got,
This is your product for quality assurance sampling.
four coins. It doesn't have to be pennies, it can be quarters, but since we're kind of cheap here and it's a small base, we use pennies. The idea is, if there's 4 coins, if you toss the coins, if all of them come up heads, then the item will be sampled.
What if the equipment can't be fixed here?
In that situation, we would send the device out to depot, either to be repaired by them and returned to us, or just to be nursed out completely. Nursed meaning not repairable to station, condemn it, and then have the owning work center bring it, request a new item to replace that.
If equipment is shipped out, it is handled by this man. But that's not all he does.
I also function as a material control for the PMEL. Once an item comes in that is broken, the technician fills out the 2005 to what parts they need, and I call them in through supply and track them through supply, which sometimes can be a problem. Checking status and upgrading status and making sure that we get the parts in a timely manner.
Don also lets other organizations know when their equipment is due for calibration and calls when equipment is completed.
If you would like to see PMEL and meet the Rat Pack gang, call Master Sergeant Bragan at 3813. You are welcome anytime. This is Char Hazelwood
and Dan Kirkendall behind the scenes.
We're taping tonight's show in the village of Versailles, a town that is famous for its appeal to tourists from all over Europe. On tonight's Great Island segment, Steve Hull travels to a smaller village in the remote hills of Crete.
The only way you'll find a tourist in Astraki is if he is seriously lost. It's just not that kind of town. Astraki is a half-hour's drive south from Knossos, through beautiful green valleys and twisting roads dotted with small villages you're not likely to find on a map. There aren't a lot of signs pointing the way to Astraki. The first and only one is just outside the town. So why did we go to the trouble? To discover a traditional Greek way of life that has not changed greatly in 100 years. Astraki has electricity, but it's not commonplace. There are 2 telephones in town, and the weekend we visited, only one was in service. Nonetheless, civilization has made some inroads. There isn't a city hall in Astraki, but there is the Cafe Neon. Much of the town's business is done here over a raki or retsina, though on sunny days the action moves outdoors. Don't let the expressions put you off. There's a lightness in the hearts of the villagers. You can see it as they watch the children playing in the streets. Greek kids play a lot like American kids. A good, spirited game of soccer, wrestling, and, of course, showing off for the TV camera. The church is a centerpiece, both to the town and the lives of its people. Though when you hear the bell, it may not mean services are in progress. You see, the kids like swinging by the church bell. Inside, the church is richly appointed in gold, brass, and porcelain. The air is heavy with the scent of incense and candles. We visited Astraki Easter weekend, the most important holiday on the church calendar. Central in the church Friday afternoon is the Epitaphio. Covered with flowers, it represents Christ's funeral bier in a drama that will see death and mourning turn to new life and celebration as the village recreates the story of the first Easter. Friday evening service is somber and reflective. The town elders began chanting from the holy books before 7. It will be past 10 before they finish. This is a funeral service for the crucified Lord, and late in the evening the villagers parade the epitafio slowly through the darkened streets. To a Christian, it is an inspiring event, though to a TV camera, well, it's a little hard to follow. Saturday marks another extended worship service, yet the feeling is subtly different. There's an excitement, a mood of anticipation you can feel in the air. In the little church, it is strictly standing room only. Shortly before midnight, the faithful take their candles into the streets and cluster around the church grounds. You don't need a watch to tell when midnight strikes. It is now Sunday morning, and with the priest's triumphant cry, Christos Aneste, Christ is risen, all heaven breaks loose. The men of the village start a bonfire from dried brush. It adds a festive, dancing light to the celebration. And yet, looking into the fire, one becomes contemplative, tying together ancient ritual and a people whose ways are as elemental and timeless, and yet somehow as fleeting as the sparks rising from the fire.
Steve wouldn't have known about the village of Astraki, but for this man, Travis Gordon. He teaches a Greek culture class with the University of Maryland. He also teaches English, his major field. He loves words, using language to speak and write creatively, and he enjoys sharing his enthusiasm and passion for the subject with others. He was teaching in Libya when friends encouraged him to visit a lovely island called Crete.
I think most of my life I've worked or been involved in a career that was at least 9 to 5, maybe more, and I've never had, a year in which I planned to do nothing. So I came here with that idea. Of course, I didn't do it. I was here probably less than a week. In fact, I was still on vacation here, and ran into Steve Kimball in the education office. And the idea was I would stay a year. I didn't know how much longer, and I still don't. I've been here 4 years, and I don't want to go away.
So what is a typical week like for you with the Education Center?
First of all, I have the Maryland courses. Most of the time I have 2 courses, which means 4 evenings a week. I usually come in the afternoon to meet with students. I'm very excited about a new program we have in the education office. We have a reading tutorial program. We have a lot of students young people, who come into the Air Force, and they're bright. They're typical of their generation. They don't read. They don't use the written word to gather information. And I've been able to set up a program for them, and we've been very successful.
Do you enjoy teaching?
I think the correct answer to that is yes. The true answer is yes most of the time. I think generally the thing that makes teaching worthwhile is when you are pleasantly surprised by a student. It's exciting when you see a student begin to question, especially in a writing course, begin to question the world around him. And when I see a student that's able to think for himself rather than use the thoughts he's borrowed from someone else or the convenient way of thinking, it's very exciting.
Travis also writes, perhaps to hone his skills, or a release of impressions, ideas, or feelings. But writing doesn't always come by way of inspiration.
I think long ago gave up on the idea of inspiration as a motivation for writing. I'm a little hard-nosed about that. The only way to write is sit in a chair and write. And most of the time, I'm pretty good at it. I can make myself sit in the chair for 2 hours, 3 hours. Recently, I've been working on some short stories, and if it's a bad day, it's a long philosophical letter to the States.
Well, obviously, you didn't take that year off like you planned. Just what kept you on the island?
I was so involved in bureaucratic Washington, D.C., that I'd lost touch with the things I enjoyed most. And here I have them. There are whole fields of writing I've been able to explore. I think it maybe has made me a better teacher because I have become aware of other areas, psychology, sociology, literature. My education has grown in the last 4 years here.
And naturally, as Travis Gordon's education grows, so do his students' education at the University of Maryland at Iraklion.
As you can see, we're having beautiful weather now that the sun is out. And so are the baseballs and volleyballs and jogging shoes.
And to give us a running start on the sports events, here's Gino Plyler with a look at everything you're doing to stretch those muscles and work that body.
The month of April was jam-packed with all kinds of sporting events here at Iraklion. Everything from soccer to basketball to the base softball team. We'll take a look at all those in just a moment. But right now, it's time to relive that climb. The test of endurance, the one and the only, the Mount Edheri Run. On the last weekend of April, over 120 runners met at the bottom of Mount Edheri to try and conquer the grueling 2-mile run straight up. And as luck would have it, before the race, I had a chance to speak with a man who finished in front of the pack, Mr. John Turner. And John had his own strategy for winning this race.
I've trained relentlessly for the last year for this race. There's no doubt about it. I run this hill twice a week the last year.
Really?
Yeah. I live about half a mile from here, so instead of running around the base, I nip up the hill here. I call it Hippo Hill because of the little ears up there. It's a little pimple compared with Pikes Peak. We used to live in Colorado, and so I used to jog up the mountains in Colorado. So this is a mere pimple compared with that.
Now, what would you say would be the best thing for a person to do who hasn't made the run before, say a first-time runner on the Mount Edheri Run? What would be the best strategy? Take it slow, or?
Just to take your time and don't look back and don't look down. And just keep going, keep plugging away, yeah.
And plug away John did. The man who hails from Wales used that Pikes Peak experience to outrun the entire field. John set a fast pace and just barely missed the Mount Edheri record. He also picked up the big trophy as the first-place finisher overall and took the honors for first in the 30 to 39 age group. The winner in the women's division was Miss Gloria Sparling. Yes, a very good day at the top for those redheads. Other winners included Ed Walls, TDY from Athens, Nancy Altier, Steve Kimball, and a festering Flying Feet. The race, well, it was very demanding, as you might expect, and also grueling. But the feeling of conquering an uphill 2-mile test of endurance, well, it was almost too good to explain. If you made it, hey, congratulations. But if you didn't, remember, there's always next year. What was the hardest part of the run for you today?
I think the hardest part was starting.
How did you finish today?
64th.
And what was the toughest part of the race for you?
All of it.
From start to finish, right?
From start to finish, it was a bear.
Back on level ground, the base soccer team was getting its act together. Led by the play and coaching of Rick Hargrave, the team had its hands full with Gourvez last month, but showed everyone just what kind of team they really are. After falling behind 5-1 in the first half, Iraklion came charging back to tie things up at 5 and gain the respect of the fans and opposing team. If you get a chance to see this team in action, don't pass it up. It's well worth it. While the big kids were getting their game in shape, the smaller athletes were finding out what the game was all about. The AYA soccer season officially began with 8 teams taking part in the 1984 season. Division I teams were made up of the Red Devils, coached by George Pastore and Frank Salazar. Team 2 is the High Flying Eagles. Rick Doling and Robert Terhart lead this team. The Blue Thunder is team number 3, and Mary Johnson and Wendy Pruitt are the ladies in charge of this hard-working bunch of players. And team number 4 is led by coaches John Horner and Don Revore. The Green Machine is known as the Barracudas. In Division 2, we have those Orange Tornadoes. Dennis Schneider and Gordon Miller are the coaches of this fantastic team. The Bobcats have Robert Terhart and James Chavis calling their plays. The Scorpion players have no problem relating to their coaches since they're the youngest in the league. Mark and Brett Langenberg make up the brother coaching combination. And last but not least, we have the Wildcats, who are being taught the finer points of the game by Mary Johnson and Kathy Dowling. Yes, AYA soccer, it's a family affair. Our women's base volleyball team took a trip to Zaragoza, Spain to compete in the MSC tournament. Although the other teams had a chance to get ready by playing some tough competition, head coach Bob Smith says that's the only real problem facing his squad.
Well, Gino, I think we stand as good a chance as anybody else in the tournament. We've been working hard on our passes, our sets, our spikes, and we've progressively gotten a little bit better over the last couple of weeks. And everybody's putting out 100%. I don't see why we can't do as good as any of the other teams. I think the only problem we might have is the fact that we didn't get a lot of playing time in. Other than that, we're ready.
The team is made up of 8 hard-working, dedicated ladies. The setters include Erica Evans, who is always ready to set up that perfect strike. The other setter is Marge Zerby Duffy, a lady who can move all over the court when she has to. The spikers are a special breed of player. Besides drilling that ball over the net, they must also be a stopper when it's coming the other way. The lineup this year includes one of the tallest players on the team, Sarah Johnson. Charlotte Moyer is another of the Smith Spikers, ready to make the big play. And then there's Cindy Sobolewski, who is always poised and, of course, prepared. 2 of the super sub-spikers are Mary Ann Westerman and Melody Witzman. Melody has that knack of always being where the ball is and putting it in play. Another lady who makes up this outstanding lineup is Robin McClarney. One lady that doesn't play in the game but does everything else is Bob's wife, Jody. The team trainer spends her time chasing down those spikes and volleys, helping the girls to limber up, and even taping the wrists or the ankles before the competition. And Jody is just one of the many people who have helped the women's base team this season, and the coach would like to say thanks.
Well, Gino, it's been a good, long 2.5 months, and I think we're ready. And I've got to say, without the help of Jose Torres, I don't believe we could have progressed as quickly as we have. Most of the drills that you see today have come from Jose. I think if the girls play as hard as they can and as hard as I know they can, we'll give them a run for the money.
On the basketball court, it was time for the grudge game of the month. The All-Stars from the compound took on the guys from Group SPS, and the compound won 71-69. And on the softball field, the base softball team is getting ready for all the tough competition of USAPE. This year's team features a tough defense and a power lineup that is hard to believe. A busy month of sports here at Iraklion, but nothing compared to the month of May. We'll be on hand to catch all the action, so be sure to join us. Up next on iMag, the always popular Touch and Go. Coming up right after this.
In a single lifetime, it is not always possible to experience every adventure the world has to offer. But the adventures of 1,000 lifetimes are at your fingertips at a Stars and Stripes bookstore. Whether you're into the sky or the sea, cars or clues, this is a place where you can pursue those interests. If you want to put some romance in your life, pinpoint locations, or map your future, the door to that future is wide open. Stars and Stripes bookstores speak your language with the latest American magazines and all the best sellers from stateside in hardcover and paperback. Get a piece of the action at one of the many Stars and Stripes bookstores around the globe.
Education and entertainment highlight tonight's Touch and Go, starting off with last month's celebration of National Library Week. The week began with a fantasy and imagination parade. Kids and adults dressed up as their favorite storybook character. The fascinating world of books was stressed throughout the week with numerous activities, with base librarian Bill Price riding shotgun.
Easter week was another big event for the kids. Easter eggs, cake, and ice cream made for a good time at the Child Care Center. A good time was had by all the little ones as they ate and wore all the goodies.
Everybody's talking, no one says a word. Always something happening, and nothing going on. Nobody told me there'd be days like these. Nobody told me there'd be days like these. Nobody told me there'd be days like these. Strange days indeed. Strange days indeed.
All those sweets mean a lot of energy, and a lot of our kids work it off on the soccer field.
It takes coordination, speed, and agility, and a lot of heart.
Working so hard.
Well, that looked like a real kick.
Speaking of which, this month the base kicked off the month of the military child. Our children are unique, traveling with mom and dad all over the world, and no matter where they're stationed, kids make the community a very special one.
So kids, we can't give you a re-enlistment bonus, but we will give you your very own month.
Iraklion's top airmen of the past 3 months were recognized at the base quarterly awards banquet.
Most of the organizations on base took the opportunity to recognize their top performers. But the evening's highest honors went to the SP's Shadrach Cooper, Airman of the Quarter, NCO of the Quarter, Staff Sergeant Charles Neiswanger of PMEL, the Senior NCO of the Quarter, Master Sergeant Cristobal Bazaldua Jr. of Air Base Group Services, and Lieutenant Larry Hill from the Pound, Junior Officer of the Quarter. Congratulations are also in order for the hard-working folks at the Base Credit Union.
It has a new look, longer hours, and a new location. Colonel Spacey cut the ribbon, officially opening the new office to the Iraklion community.
That's a community a little more tan this month now that the weather is warmer, and we can enjoy the beaches like the tourists here in Hersonosus.
Next month, we'll bring you more sun and fun, including splash day events and much, much more. But for now...
Thanks for watching us. Watch you on the picture pages of Iraklion Magazine. Good night.